In recent years, as my 20s draw to a close, and I'm staring down the barrel of a gun with middle-aged written on the side, I've been thinking about why I like the things I like. This entire retro relapse thing I've been doing for 2 years is largely because I enjoy making dumb jokes about old games, and I love sharing that with the world, but I guess it's also a kind of therapy for myself. Apart from the rare occasion where I reviewed something entirely new to myself, go watch my Dino Crisis video, it's decent. Every game I've reviewed has meant something to me as a child. A large portion of that has been me trying to understand my love for horror and how that came about. I've made it no secret on this channel that I got into horror as a teenager, and before that I had a love of the mildly macabre stuff. Your Cartoon Network and Disney Channel Halloween specials, and mildly spooky video game levels, but none of that actually scared me. Actually, that one episode of Recess actually did kind of fuck me up, truth be told, but actual horror, books or games or films, were something that I didn't really approach until I met my best friend and we bonded over Resident Evil 4. We would marathon horror films together and tried multiple times to beat Fatal Frame 2, but that's an entirely different story for an entirely different video. That was when I was about 14 years old. Before that, I was actually a really scared kid. Everything scared the shit out of me. I was so messed up I couldn't even watch Goosebumps without getting the fear. So stuff like The Grudge or The Ring, two of the biggest horror films I remember growing up, were just totally not an option for me. I was so messed up by internet screamers that I spent a good chunk of 2005 and 2006 with a terrible anxiety disorder. So it really did get quite bad. Obviously I'm an adult now and I've developed a palette around horror art, and I can watch just about anything in the dead of night and appreciate something for being scary without actually being scared. But given my midlife introspection, I've actually been wondering, what was the first game to scare the shit out of me? What was the first game I can remember as a small baby Heather just being terrified of? And I know exactly what that is. Rugrats Search For Reptar. Hey, I'm Heather, and welcome to Retro Relapse. So, cards fully on the table here. I loved Rugrats as a kid. It was probably my favourite TV show apart from Courage the Cowardly Dog, and don't worry, we'll cover that nightmare fuel in another video. There was something about Rugrats that appealed to me as a kid. These infants going on really cool adventures, and how it really was peak Nickelodeon. I'm not entirely sure if Nick is still going as strong today as it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. I imagine it's not quite the powerhouse it used to be, but believe me when I say that Nicktoons were the shit when I was growing up. SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Cat Dog, I loved that stuff. I had a pathological hatred for Doug as a kid, and I don't actually know why, but that's something I should probably tell my therapist about and not YouTube. In the late 1980s, after previous attempts to create a string of cartoon shows didn't really go as planned, Nickelodeon was looking to break into the children's cartoon market. You see, the dirty, badly kept secret of a lot of 80s cartoons, even the ones Gen Xers never shut the fuck up about, like Transformers, is that they were almost entirely a front for selling toys. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm a tofu eating wokarati with Arrested Development myself. I love action figures. I've got this little Jared Way Funko Pop and Resident Evil ducks. Fucking ducks. I have nothing against toys and merchandising, but yeah, the entire function of these Saturday morning cartoons was to imprint these characters into the heads of children so they'd annoy the shit out of their parents to buy the toys while they walk in through Walmart or whatever, and a lot of those cartoons have stood the test of time. Transformers is still going strong after all. And it's not an indictment that these shows were bad at all. What they were is commercial and safe, arguably bland and ultimately lifeless, without a lot of creator-centered input. That was the view shared by Geraldine Laybourne, then president of Nickelodeon. It was decided early on that original children's TV programming on the network would put creators front and center, letting unique ideas flourish. This is why a lot of Nicktoons are, to put it bluntly, just weird. And when looking back at their output in the 90s, they often seem like the weirder and edgy equivalent of Cartoon Network. The first three Nickelodeon shows to debut in 1991 were Ren and Stimpy, which is awesome, Doug, who's a prick and I hate him, and finally, Rugrats. Rugrats ran from 1991 until 2004, and Rugrats fever was fucking everywhere. Much like Simpsons Mania, I wasn't around for the peak of it, and even I remember being intense. It was one of the most watched cartoons of the 90s, and pretty much anyone who had access to Nickelodeon for the time has at least some memory of it, unlike Doug, who everyone hates too much to remember. Rugrats fever would culminate in 1998 with the release of the Rugrats movie, the first ever non-Disney animated film to gross over $100 million. That's a lot of Sega Saturns, and 5 times more than that prick Doug would get in his first movie. The film, from what I remember, was a decent family film. It's Rugrats at the end of the day, so if you find the visual style too gross to handle, it's not going to turn you into a die-hard fan, but I loved it as a kid. And in 1990, the Rugrats would also get their first home console video game, Rugrats Search For Reptar. A quarter of a century later, how does it hold up? Well, let's have a look. Rugrats Search For Reptar makes a first impression straight from the uncanny valley, as the intro cinematic is more or less a straight 3D version of the TV show opening. This is a fine idea of course, but maybe not on the PS1, oh my god. I mean, okay, it's like not terrible, it's not PS1 hacked or anything, and classic Kazupo's bizarre frumpy art style is at least expressive enough that it translates relatively well to the original PlayStation. That said though, there's something just off with these character models. I can't quite put my finger on it, kinda like those weird robots Japan's been throwing us with since the late 90s, but still, it's far from the worst I've seen in the PS1. The title screen is a loving homage to the Rugrats screen, and okay, that's the worst thing I've ever heard in the PS1. Not really, but like, hearing the Rugrats talk like actual babies is so weird. It makes me uncomfortable for reasons I'm unable to express with human vocal cords. We press the start button and the game jump starts with the Rugrats title card. The sound is perfect and it feels just like the show when the text comes right at us. Less so when the text hangs in the air for like 15 seconds after the music stopped. Oh PS1, your loading times are adorable. We're given another CGI cutscene where Tommy wants to build a jigsaw puzzle, but all the pieces bar one are missing. This sets Tommy off to find all the remaining puzzle pieces and finish the puzzle. These puzzle pieces are found by completing levels or collecting enough Reptar bars throughout the environments. And this environment is awesome. I really enjoy seeing houses from TV shows and films recreated in video games, and as a kid it was so cool. It really does feel like the team involved went through a lot of effort to make the hub world a really close representation of the Pickles house. You're totally free to just run about doing what you please as well. There aren't any side activities or anything, but you can interact with the piano or the guitar. You can even throw a bone for Spike the dog. You cannot pet the dog, but you can play fetch the dog, which is good enough for my book. But of course there are actual levels here, inside and outside of the Pickles house. Levels are entered by interacting with these glowing objects in the environment. Now, I'm going to do something a little different for this episode of Retro Relapse. Instead of giving a big overview of the game and focusing on a few details, I'm going to go blow by blow through each of the levels and talk about them, and the Rugrats more broadly, but also give them a spooky rating. Because, after all, this was the first game to really give me the fear. I promise it makes sense. This all comes together in the end, I promise. Our first level is Egg Hunt. It's a level where you have to run around the house looking for chocolate eggs. There isn't a whole lot to this one, it's kinda just there. So, let's talk about Angelica. I have met fully grown men. Not like 19-year-olds on AO3, but like actual middle-aged men with beards who pay taxes and shit, who have went into a frothing rage over the character of Angelica. As a kid, I noticed the only thing they would comment on when it came to Rugrats was how much of a total bellend this wee lassie is. And like, they're right, Angelica is satanic, literally one of the most awful wee shites in anything I can remember. I mean, like, that's what makes her fun as a kid. It was always so cathartic to see her get her comeuppance. And the plotline to a lot of these levels is just, Angelica's being a wanker, let's foil her evil schemes. And in this one, she wants to eat all the chocolate eggs and collect more than Tommy. We play as Tommy, we collect more eggs than Angelica. There really isn't much to say about this one. This one gets a 0 spooky bitches doing strange motions in the hallway out of 10 on the spookometer. And now let's have a look at level 2's Cookie Race, where Angelica is once again being an absolute roaster and we have to race her to the kitchen and get some cookies. Let's talk about the controls in Search for Reptar. They're shite, that's all there is to it, honestly, and the camera really doesn't help either. And sing along now, you all know the words. This is a PS1 game, so you can't manually control the camera, and you're at the mercy of the environments. And usually the controls aren't a huge problem apart from Tommy running into walls all the time, but that's fine, that's just my daily life. Having to participate in a race with these controls, that's another matter entirely. Needless to say, I'm a dumb bitch and I'm bad at games, so I actually had to restart this level once. Not my proudest moment, I had to say. Although Tommy can just fucking yeet himself on the top of the stairs, so that's a thing. Thanks to these tragic scenes, Cookie Race gets a 1 people can lick 2 out of 10 on the spookometer. Now it's time for some fucking mini golf! I fucking love mini golf, mate. Like, half of my goddamn childhood memories either involve Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer or playing mini golf in Blackpool. Fun fact, one time I was playing mini golf when I was like 8 years old or something, and instead of just putting the ball, I swung it right back like fucking Happy Gilmore and thumped my dad just below the eye with it. He still has the scar. Sorry, Dad. Love you. Sadly, there's no patricide in this mini golf. Although Stu is such a neglectful parent at this point, I think Tommy could get away with it. Honestly, it's a 9-hole course of mini golf. That's all there is to it. I did get a hole in 1 though. Yeah. I'm available, motherfucker. Although, this level does have 2 of the moments in this game that scared me shitless. One happens right here at the very edge of the course. For reasons I do not understand. Yeah, that gave me nightmares. The other is right here in this Egypt-themed course. You go exploring around the map, looking for Reptar bars, only to find that the back of the pyramid is actually open, and it's full of Reptar bars. Sick, you think, having just been rewarded for your exploration. But as you get further into the maze-like hallways, you don't just find Reptar bars. You find this. Yeah, right? That can fuck off. This one gets 4 Return the Slabs out of 10 on the spookometer for these moments. Next on the agenda, we have Chucky's glasses. Once again, Angelica's been a wanker of dug proportions and decides to ruin the baby's game of hide and seek by insisting that Chucky play the game without his glasses. Not only is this actively dangerous and I'm phoning the police, but it's another one of those levels where you have to race the babies to the playpen. After slapping the shit out of them, of course. Shout out to Chucky, by the way. He was my favourite character in the show apart from Kimmy. I really did find his fear of pretty much everything deeply relatable. For severe violations of the rules of war against cruel and unusual punishment, this one gets 2 blind man not a rapist out of 10 on the spookometer. Okay, now we're getting to the real spooky shit. Grandpa's teeth opens with the family at a play park when an evil bastard goose steals Grandpa's teeth. The baby set out to find the teeth and return them. Seems pretty straightforward. Also, at the start of the level you can make the babies play on the swing, the seesaw and stuff. It's really cute. You know what isn't cute? Mazes. And this level has one fucker of a hedge maze. I don't know why, but I'm terrified of hedge mazes. Well, I think it probably has something to do with getting lost and being directionless, but even playing a game I get a little uneasy in a maze, and you wouldn't catch me dead in one of these things in real life. Unless I actually entered one, then you'd probably find me dead, especially if the maze is filled to the brim with evil, angry bastard geese. There is really nothing scarier than geese, apart from swans, but they're really just like geese with buffs, and they will chase you relentlessly. But these geese aren't the real problem. The real problem is this guy with teeth. Yeah, that ruined my life as a kid. For this poultry attempt at horror, Grandpa's teeth gets 5 dead Thatchers out of 10 on the spookometer. Next up is Maryland. This one actually kinda fucks and it was my favourite as a kid. You see, Rugrats generally had 2 different types of episodes. First off were the episodes set in the real world, just exaggerated cartoon episodes. Everything that happens on screen is what's happening to the babies in the real world. These episodes are generally somewhat down to earth, but still have mental things happening to the babies. The other episodes were imagination episodes, and these are always my favourite as a kid. Much like real kids, the babies will interpret something in the real world in the most magical and adventurous way possible, and the episode will be told from inside their imagination. So for a kid, this show was always really exciting mixture of like everyday stuff that toddlers would be concerned with, and the more outlandish adventures, which I'm pretty sure is why the show has such a wide appeal. Maryland is loosely based off one of these episodes. In the level, Tommy needs to go around finding these boxes, and then collecting the balloons that fall out of them within the time limit. This is my favourite as a kid, and even as an adult I actually kind of enjoy the Maryland level. Sure, just using the same level and assets but different isn't the most original thing in the world, but they rendered the entire Pickles house upside down. So they at least put more effort into this than the entire second half of Devil May Cry 4. I actually get quite turned around going into this level. It was quite impressive. Once again though, it's a shame the controls are like Yarmo after 3 Picardy Breezers. It also has an uncanny atmosphere since we know these rooms, but something's off. And everything's kinda different, mostly being that everything's upside down. And for that I give Maryland a 3 Mick Taylors out of 10 on the spookometer. Get it? Upside down? Australia? Oh, fuck off. Circus Angelica. Look, this is wank and I hate it. Angelica's been a FUD again and decides to set up a circus and forces the babies into working in the circus despite A, them being non-union, and B, OSHA would go fucking mental. The first part of this sees you getting very close to committing manslaughter by launching Chucky off a seesaw, and frankly, that's just not on. But it's not as bad as driving this tricycle as Phil and Lil. Oh yeah, Phil and Lil are in this game, but you don't play as them. Susie is also absent as a playable character, and Kimmy hadn't been introduced yet. These controls are diabolical. Like, at least significantly worse than the on-foot controls. And the whole gimmick is that you have to keep your speed high enough to land in this circle, but not high enough that you fucking Evel Knievel yourself into the fence. Honestly, I just don't want to talk about this level anymore, it's giving me a headache. So this one gets 2 legless guys who freaks out of 10 on the spookometer. Okay, now we're into the proper horror shit, so hold on to your socks. Visitors from Outer Space scared me shitless as a kid. The overall plot is that the babies get abducted by aliens and it's up to Angelica to save the gang. Now, apart from the soundtrack and the isolated atmosphere of this level, and the really bad zero gravity controls, the real scary part of the level is these guys. They're like TVs, but they have arms, but they float. And look, I was dumb as a kid, but these guys were fucking terrifying, by the way. This also has by far the darkest ending out of any of the levels. Angelica makes her way to the cargo bay of the ship to escape with the babies, but the babies decide they're actually going to take the last shuttle out of the ship and leave Angelica to her fate amongst the aliens with no hope of escape. That's fucked, man. She totally deserves it though. Weak cow. This one gets 5 John Hurt tummy aches out of 10 on the spookometer. Incident on Isle 7 is the level that probably best encapsulates the duality of Search for Reptar. It gave me the fear as a kid, but it's also the most frustrating level in the entire game. Tommy and Chucky get lost in a supermarket and have to navigate the treacherous aisles and search for Reptar cereal. In their path, they'll have to overcome the worst platforming sections in the game, slippy floors, haunted doors, two overworked, underpaid and ununionized employees, and mankind's greatest foe, the lobster. Okay, these guys scared the hell out of me as a kid, so this level gets at least 5 out of 10 cheap Elden Ring deaths on the speedometer. Toy Palace does not fuck around. We're officially in the 5-year-old Heather nightmare fuel territory now, by the way. Getting lost in a giant toy shop is probably every kid's dream, right? Being able to wander around and play with all the toys you want without any adult supervision? That was the good shit. Toy Palace is here to tell us that actually being lost in a toy store would be the most terrifying thing in the world, full of gorilla jump scares. Seriously, this noise haunts me to this day. There's a moment where I actually jumped replaying this level because it started chasing me and it made the noise. Now, is this actually scarier because I'm easily startled and a dumb bitch? I think we all know the answer to that question. It also has some really nasty platforming sections. And for some reason, the forward jumping in this game is just busted. I could never quite tell if Tommy jumps after I let go of the X button or just after pressing it. So getting the timing right was a real bitch, and I mostly just sort of lucked my way out of it. The platforming just isn't very good. But for the horrible noise that haunts my dreams to this very day, Toy Palace gets a 6 fuck this dinosaur in particulars out of 10 on the speedometer. The mysterious Mr. Friend can fuck off, I cannot handle this. Okay, so I hinted at the Uncanny Valley earlier, but when I was a kid, I think This Wee Gal is probably my first trip there. This level is based off the episode of the same name where Stu invents this horrible wee gremlin called Mr. Friend, and it's just the most awful looking thing ever. Thankfully, this level allows us to take our revenge on multiple Mr. Friends by engaging in honest-to-god combat, and it's diabolically bad. You need to kill the Mr. Friends in the basement by throwing cans at them, and it's damn near impossible to consistently line up shots with any kind of accuracy. They're also just prone to ganging up on you. It's hard to die here, of course, this is a baby game for babies, but it's very frustrating to say the least. For being a moderately creepy waste of time and money, Mr. Friend gets 6 Liz Trusses out of 10 on the speedometer. So by this point in the game, we've actually acquired enough jigsaw pieces to progress to the final level, but I want to talk about one more level before we get to that point, and it's the only level we have left, because I've been saving the best one for last. Hey, editing Heather here. So I was just chatting shit there, right? I missed an entire level where you play as Spike trying to get Angelica's doll back, but I forgot to do it, so imagine I said something really witty and clever about the controls. Thank you, bye. This next level is the one that scared me as a kid. The others so far have freaked me out, maybe left me a little unsettled as a kid, but this is the one that turned the speedometer up to 11 when I was wee. So imagine the scene. You're baby Heather, probably around 7 years old. It's Friday night, so your mum has allowed you to sit up 1 more hour past your usual bedtime. So you're sitting there in the dark, your room just barely lit by the glow of your tiny CRT TV. You're playing Rugrats, and you're finding it fun. Quite hard, but fun. And you only have 1 level left until your final Reptar piece. You are so close to beating the game. The first game you will ever see the ending credits of. And you start the level, Let There Be Light. Tommy wakes up in the night and it's dark. Too dark. He needs some light and, through his baby logic, concludes that the best place to get light would be from the fridge. So he grabs his trusty flashlight and begins his trip towards the kitchen. Already the music is creeping you out, along with the dark environments. But you can just about manage that. What you can't just about manage is what's waiting for you at the end of the hall. Yeah, that's it. I'm just really scared of ghosts. I was back then, and I still am to this day. They give me the fear. Well, these don't anymore. But let me tell you, this got under my skin so thoroughly as a kid that I never played this level again until years later. It got me that badly. And I think I get why. You see, the evil clown toys, the giant gorilla, the geese teeth, which is also the name of my upcoming new solo project, these are all something from the real world. Things that, while they aren't rare, they aren't exactly common sights. I don't see that many geese, gorillas, or clowns. Apart from the comments section. Get fucking wrecked! But I'll tell you what I did see and still do see very often. Hallways. Hallways are peculiar in that if you're in a hallway, you're in this liminal space that is neither here nor there. And even as a kid, that freaked me out. I was a really scared child, as I mentioned before, and my earliest fear is the fear of the dark, of not being able to see what's around me, or what's at the end of the hallway. This fear has kept with me to this very day. Even now, if I leave my bedroom at night, I turn on every light I come across, and then turn them off only when I'm absolutely done with that room. It drives my flatmates mental, I'm sure, but that's my particular phobia. Notably, this doesn't actually happen outside. I fucking love it when it's dark outside, but then again, I'm basically a raccoon with a YouTube channel, so that's to be expected. This level is the first time I remember being scared of the dark, and that's actually kind of important to me, I think. But Rugrats has one more trick up its sleeve, the final level, Reptar 2010. And I shitteth ye not, this is literally a level where you get to play as the titular Reptar and run around a city causing all sorts of chaos as you make your way towards City Hall. And after you've caused billions of dollars of damage to the local council, you arrive at City Hall, and this happens. And honestly, I can't think of a better way to end this game. For purely sentimental reasons, this is one of my favourite final levels ever, even if it controls like shit. And with that in mind, should you play Rugrats Search For Reptar? I mean, no? If you've listened to me ramble and struggle to think of horror movies, then you've really experienced all there is with Rugrats Search For Reptar. And you know what? That's fine. It's a kids game. A kids game primarily aimed at those who love the Rugrats like I did growing up, and that's a perfectly acceptable thing to be. It's not an awful game by any means, it's not like Bubsy 3D, it's functional, and I think kids would get some fun out of it. I did. Not that any kid's gonna put down their Fortnite or their Raging Ravens for a Rugrats game these days, of course. I feel like trying to answer this question is kind of missing the point and the value of these games. As games grow older and older, they do become less and less relevant to modern audiences, especially ones aimed at kids, and double especially those aimed at properties that aren't really what they used to be. But the value in these games, I think, is in a record of the pop culture memory of the time. This was one of the best selling games on the PlayStation, remember? It was the first 3D adventure game based on one of the hottest properties in the world on the hottest console in the world, and it holds a special place in the memories of hundreds of thousands if not millions of people, and that's why I think covering Search For Reptar is worth something. It's also why I'm glad I replayed it. I like to refresh my childhood memories every now and then, to go back and see how things compare to how they used to be. And that's why I say that if you're interested in these old kid-friendly games, then yeah, give Search For Reptar a shot, especially if you played it before. But if you don't have any nostalgic attachment to the Rugrats, and that includes probably most of my audience under the age of 25, and you don't take joy in experiencing old art, then I'd say give it a miss. I don't regret playing it at all. Rugrats was on hiatus for a long time. It was the longest running show on Nickelodeon when it finally stopped production, and Rugrats media has been slow to trickle out ever since. There were a couple of spin-offs. Rugrats had featured a number of games before the cancellation in 2004, although as far as I'm aware, none of them had the reach or as fondly remembered as Search For Reptar. They would also feature in a bunch of these Nickelodeon crossover games, which is neat. But of course the Rugrats would make their return to the small screen in 2020 with the release of a brand new animated TV show. I haven't seen it and I don't really intend to. I've heard mixed things about it, but I generally have a do not interact policy when it comes to 3D animated remakes of old cartoons. Let me know if it's any good. So it seems like they're at least trying to make Rugrats relevant again in the 21st century, and I say best of luck to them. The series will always have a special place in my heart as one of the favourite cartoons growing up. I don't imagine we'll see another proper video game based on the Rugrats, at least not a 3D one on home consoles. It's just nowhere near as cost effective to make these anymore. In fact, it seems like games based directly on films and TV shows are more or less dying off. It used to be that you could rely on pretty much every hit property to have a game release not long after or even just before the IP's original release. Not anymore though, and yeah, I'm kind of fine with that. It's just a change in trends and the economic reality of an industry that is more focused on the most financially lucrative products they can without much care for artists or artistry, which, it just so happens, is the same problem that led to the creation of Nicktoons in the first place. It's just a shame we had to be introduced to that prick Doug in the process. Hey, thank you all so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Relapse is a Patreon supported show, and I would like to give a shout out to my £5 or more patrons: House of the Ted, Noel Kasler, Martimus Prime 089, Myrexica, and JC. I hope you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.